Alright, so picture this. Doug Ford's PCs are cruising along, looking pretty comfortable with a lead that would make most politicians sleep like babies. But wait, there's a plot twist. The Liberals, a party that literally doesn't even have a leader right now, are somehow winning in the GTA. Yes, you heard that right. No captain, no plan, no problem, apparently. It's like watching a hockey team score goals while their coach is still in the parking lot looking for their whistle. Welcome back to Canadian Insights, where Canadian politics gets just as weird as you'd expect, and today we're diving into the absolute circus that is Ontario provincial politics right now. So let's start with the headline numbers, because they're honestly wild. The Doug Ford PCs are sitting at 44% support among decided voters. Not bad, right? That's a solid lead. They are 9 points ahead of the Liberals who are at 35%. If an election happened tomorrow, Ford would be popping champagne and probably announcing another highway project before breakfast. The NDP is trailing at 16%, and the Greens are hanging on with 3%, which is basically the political equivalent of being invited to a party but having to stand in the hallway because there's no room left inside. But here's where it gets spicy. Those provincial numbers hide a massive regional story that should have conservative strategists breaking out in cold sweats. Because while Ford's team is dominating in rural Ontario and smaller cities, they're bleeding support faster than a Tim Hortons runs out of Timbits on a Sunday morning in the one place that actually matters for winning elections, the Greater Toronto Area. Let's break down these regional numbers because they tell a story that's way more interesting than those top-line figures suggest. In Eastern Ontario, the PCs are crushing it with 54% support. Southwest Ontario? 52%. South Central Ontario? 48%. These are the kind of numbers that make political operatives do happy dances. Ford's base is solid in these areas. People are buying what is selling, whether that's highways, development, or just the general vibe of a premier who looks like he'd be really good at barbecuing at a cottage. But then we get to Northern Ontario, and suddenly the script flips harder than a pancake at a church breakfast. Up north, the PCs are sitting at just 30% support while the leaderless, yes, still leaderless Liberals are commanding 40%. Let that sink in for a second. The Liberals don't even have someone to put on the lawn signs yet, and they're beating the sitting government by 10 points in Northern Ontario. That's not just a warning sign, that's a full-blown alarm with flashing lights and someone yelling into a megaphone. Now let's talk about the GTA, because this is where things get absolutely bonkers. In the 905 region, those crucial suburban ridings that basically decide who runs Queen's Park, the Liberals are ahead 44% to 38%. In the 416, Toronto proper, it's even worse for the PCs at 45% to 40% for the Liberals. Again, these are Liberals without a leader. They haven't announced a leadership race. They don't have a platform. They probably don't even have a catchy slogan yet. And they are winning in the most vote-rich area of the entire province. This is like showing up to a street race in a car with no driver and still somehow winning. It's political physics that shouldn't work, but here we are. What this tells us is that GTA voters aren't necessarily voting for the Liberals, they're voting against Doug Ford. It's a protest vote on steroids, and it should be setting off every alarm bell in Conservative headquarters. Think about what this means strategically. You can win every small town from Thunder Bay to Cornwall, you can dominate the rural ridings, you can have farmers and small business owners singing your praises, but if you lose the GTA, you lose the election. Period. End of story. The math is simple but brutal. There are more people in the 905 and 416 than in entire regions of the province combined. You could win Northern Ontario, Eastern Ontario, and Southwestern Ontario by massive margins and still get demolished if the GTA turns against you. And right now, the GTA is turning against Doug Ford faster than drivers turn around when they see a construction D2 sign on the highway. Which, let's be honest, is something Ontario drivers have had plenty of practice with lately. The question everyone should be asking is why? Why is a government that's leading provincially losing ground in the province's economic and population center? Part of the answer might be found in the Liaison Strategies poll's other finding, the one about Ford's big ambitious tunnel project for the 401. Spoiler alert, voters hate it. Few voters support this plan, and most think the money should be spent elsewhere. When your signature infrastructure project, the thing you're presumably betting your legacy on, is getting ratioed harder than a bad tweet, that's a problem. The 401 tunnel is classic Doug Ford. Big, bold, expensive, and designed to solve a problem that everyone agrees exists. Traffic on the 401 is genuinely terrible. Anyone who's sat in bumper-to-bumper hell trying to get across Toronto knows this. But here's the thing, Voters are looking at this tunnel proposal the same way you'd look at someone suggesting they solve their money problems by buying a yacht. Like, sure, technically that's a purchase you could make, but is it really the smartest use of resources right now? People are saying the money should go elsewhere, and it's not hard to imagine where. Healthcare is struggling. Schools need funding. Transit expansion that doesn't involve burying highways underground would probably be popular. Housing is still a crisis. The cost of living is squeezing families harder than a python with commitment issues. And Ford's big pitch is essentially, what if we took billions of dollars and dug a really big hole under an existing highway? The vibes are off. This tunnel project is becoming a symbol of a government that's maybe lost touch with what regular people are worried about. It's the political equivalent of Marie Antoinette's alleged let them eat cake moment, except it's let them drive through an underground tunnel. It sounds impressive in a press conference, but when people are struggling to pay rent and buy groceries, mega projects start looking less like vision and more like vanity. Meanwhile, the NDP is sitting at 16% provincially, which is honestly pretty rough for a party that used to be a major force in Ontario politics. Their strongest showing is in south-central Ontario with 23%, which includes regions like Waterloo and Guelph, but everywhere else they're struggling to break through. It's like they're stuck in political purgatory, not quite dead but not exactly thriving either. They're relevant enough to matter for vote splits but not strong enough to seriously threaten for government. The Green Party at 3% is basically a rounding error at this point. They're in survival mode, hoping to hold on to whatever seats they have and maybe, just maybe, stay relevant enough that people remember they exist when environmental issues make headlines. So what does all this mean for the future? Well, if you're Doug Ford, you've got a genuine problem brewing. Sure, you're ahead overall, sure, you'd win an election today, but the trend lines are pointing in the wrong direction where it matters most. The GTA is slipping away, Northern Ontario has already slipped, and your big signature project is about as popular as a snowstorm in April. If you're the Liberals, you're probably feeling pretty good despite not having a leader, which is a sentence that shouldn't make sense but somehow does. You're winning in the 905 and 416, you're competitive in the North, and you haven't even started campaigning yet. The challenge will be whether you can maintain this momentum once you actually have to pick a leader and present a vision. There's a real risk that voters like you more as a blank canvas than they will once you start filling in the details. The bigger picture here is that Ontario politics is more fluid than people realize. Ford looked unbeatable for a while, but political fortunes can change faster than highway traffic conditions. One day you're cruising, the next day you're stuck behind an accident wondering how you got here. The GTA has historically been the kingmaker in Ontario elections, and right now the GTA is sending a very clear message: we're not happy. Whether Ford can turn this around probably depends on whether he can read the room better than his tunnel project suggests. Can he pivot to issues that GTA voters actually care about? Can he rebuild trust in communities that feel ignored? Can he convince suburban families that he understands their struggles? These are the questions that will determine whether those top-line numbers hold up or whether we're watching the beginning of a slow-motion political collapse. And for everyone watching Ontario politics, this is your reminder that numbers tell stories, but regional numbers tell the real story. Don't just look at the headlines. Dig into where support is coming from and where it's going. That's where you find the truth about what's really happening. So there you have it, folks. Doug Ford is ahead but losing ground where it counts, the Liberals are winning without even trying, and Ontario voters think that tunnel project should probably stay in the brainstorming phase. If you found this breakdown helpful and want to stay on top of everything happening in Canadian politics, make sure you're subscribed to Canadian Insights because we're posting new videos every single day breaking down the stories that actually matter. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this, drop a comment telling me what you think about these poll numbers, and I'll see you in the next one where we keep making sense of the beautiful chaos that is Canadian politics.